G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright, people. Next week, we have Conor Benn versus Chris Algieri. I'm mainly going to talk about that fight in this video. That's the one I'm mainly going to talk about. But I'm also going to talk about the whole card in a nutshell. And just give my just kind of basic synopsis, 2 cents on it. And just speak with some of the fighters who were on it. Now, there's only one 12-round fight on this. And it's not the main event. Which I'll get to now in a sec. I'll talk about that one. That's actually an intriguing enough fight. You know, it's Jordan Gill's in it. I like watching Jordan Gill, to be fair. He's not... I think there's a little bit too much hype around him. I don't know if I say hype. I think Dave Colwell hypes him more so than anyone else. But I think he should win this fight that he's fighting. I'll talk about that, as I said, now in a sec. But on this card, with a debutant in Callum French, making his debut. I've heard the name all right, but I cannot remember now. Obviously, it's his pro debut, so I would have seen him as an amateur. I think he might have been in the World Series of Boxing. I think I might have seen him there, because the name certainly rings a bell. It definitely does. But in terms of seeing him live or watching him on TV or YouTube, I can't put an accurate kind of image on it. But I definitely know now I might have seen him in the amateurs a few times. Peter McGill, 1-0, featherweight against TBA. A lot of these fights are actually TBA. So bear in mind, some of these, if they can't get opponents, and you know that can happen, some of these might get binned. Paddy Lacey again. These are names like I must have seen like one or two of their fights, maybe an amateur fight, but they don't ring any bells. Another guy called Joe McGrail making his pro debut. So again, these will be on the beyond the bell or before the bell. They'll be on that kind of portion. Obviously, there's one name on here who, again, yes, he's in a fight, but it's TBA. Who's Joe Cordina? Now, Joe Cordina is... I don't mean any disrespect by this, because I think he's a very good fighter, but he's almost like the dark horse of the 2016 Team GB side, isn't he? Because Lawrence Okoli is the only one who's won a world title. Yeah, he is. The rest of them have really kind of faltered a bit, whereas Joe Cordina has been consistently racking up wins. Obviously, his last win was a spectacular knockout in the first round. It was very good. But he looked good without ever looking, jaw-dropping or anything like that. He just kind of went through the motions and went through the paces. But he's looking a lot better now as of late. And he's in against TBA, so I'm not going to put my hand out and say, he's going to be in a 50-50 pick and fight. It's not going to be like that. But I'm very keen to see where his career goes and how he progresses, because I have to say, as I said, I mean no disrespect saying it, that he really is the dark horse. He kind of was a fighter when he turned pro. I looked at him, he looked okay in parts, but I didn't see much there. He's improved a lot, and he's just kind of fought on these undercards. I don't think he's ever main evented on any, when they were with Sky. I don't think he ever main evented, maybe on a next gen show, but certainly not on a big card. And he's just been going through the motions quite. So it'll be interesting to see how he looks. Kevin Diago, who is from Belfast, who's actually a very, very good little fighter. This is his first fight with Matchroom. He was signed. Was he signed? Well, he was definitely fighting on BT Sports. I don't know if he was signed by Queensberry, but for certainly now he's with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. He's in there against the guy who is undefeated. I actually had a look at this guy's box rec a little while ago, and it's not at it in the right home about. A guy called Neo Laris Jr., 24 years old, from California. His record is 14-0 with 6 knockouts, but realistically, I mean, this record is absolutely atrocious. I mean, his last opponent was 25-26. The opponent after that, 22-16, 5-14, 0-15, 5-21. You see where I'm going with this. 9-27, 4-21, 1-3-1, 8-9, 0. Oh yeah, and literally he didn't fight an opponent with a win until the 6th pro fight. 0-13, 0-9, 0 wins, 0 losses, and a draw, and then 2 debutants. Really poor record. So although on paper Ngago I should say is fighting a guy who's undefeated, I mean realistically you'd expect, because he has a bit of background from the amateurs. You know, he's big at the weight, he hits hard, he's been looking quite good as of late. So I'm looking forward to seeing his career progress. You know, he's definitely got a following, you know, coming from Belfast. So what other fighter? Well, it's in Liverpool. This fight's actually in Liverpool. So Liverpool is not too far from Ireland. In fact, it's only a stone's throw. You can get a boat or you can fly to Liverpool from Ireland or Belfast. It's not too far. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see some Belfast crowd and some Irish fans in the arena for that. Well, they'll definitely be there actually, because Katie Taylor's fighting. So of course there will be. There'll be some noise for him as well. For sure, I expect him to win that fight. Robbie Davis Jr. has an interesting test against Henry Lunde. Now, Lunde, I think it's fair to say he's a gatekeeper now at this stage. It's for the vacant WBA Continental Super Lightweight title. Robbie Davis Jr. is on the comeback trail. He's lost. I forget the guy who knocked him out. That was on. I think that was on the Eubank Quinlan undercard. It might have been just before that. I think it was just before that actually. He lost to him. He lost to Lewis Ritson in a close fight, and then he had that fight. I think it was on the Josh Kelly undercard at the start of the year. Josh Kelly Avanesian, where he lost on that card as well on points. He's been on the comeback trail. Now, Henry Lunde, gatekeeper at this stage, but durable. You know, he is 31-9 in terms of his win-loss record. He's only ever been stopped twice. He was stopped 10 years ago by John Molina Jr. I don't even have it there. I just remember that fight. I remember that fight well. John Molina Jr. was kind of a contender, you know. By the end, when he was fighting Crawford, he was finished, but he got stopped by John Molina Jr. and by Terence Crawford. I know that because I know those two fights. I remember them well. And Crawford was only about 5 years ago, so we know Crawford can punch. Coming off a competitive fight against Jose Zepeda, you know, lost to Avery Sparrow on a majority decision. He was down a few times in that fight. That really lost him, that fight. Had another 12-round unanimous decision loss back in 2018 to a guy whose name is very difficult to pronounce. It was stopped by Crawford. Technical decision loss to Mauricio Herrera. Thomas Delorme lost to him. Victor Postal, Ray Beltran. So he's losing against pretty decent guys. You know, he's been hanging it. I think, was he? No, that was someone else actually I was thinking of. So yeah, that should be an interesting little scrap. We'll see how Robbie Davis Jr. is looking. You know, if Robbie Davis Jr. wants to progress, he really should be beating guys like this. Carmen Gawaffi, again I'm probably saying that name wrong, he's fighting Jordan Gill for the European featherweight title. Now, he was actually stopped in a round by Lee McGregor back down at bantamweight. This fight's a featherweight, and that Lee McGregor fight wasn't that long ago actually, wasn't it? No, it was only March of this year. In fact, actually, he'd been campaigning, hadn't he been campaigning at flyweight? No, I thought for some reason he'd be campaigning. So yeah, basically he was stopped at bantamweight by Lee McGregor earlier this year. Had a split decision win over Adriano Gago, who is not a particularly good fighter. You know, he's alright, but he's nothing to write home about. Had a split decision win over him in his first fight at featherweight for the European title. I expect Jordan Gill to win this fight. Jordan Gill is alright. I do think that he's levels below where Dave Caldwell rates him. Dave Caldwell used to be a promoter. So when he's talking about his fighters who he's training, he's taking almost a promoter's spin on them. You're never going to say your fighter is bad. But Dave Caldwell has a way of just making it out as though these guys are the best things since sliced bread. You know, because he's a former promoter. I don't know if he still does promote, but I know he used to have shows running on Sky at one stage. So he kind of has the promoter's hat on when he's describing his fighters. Jordan Gill is alright. He's kind of, I'll put it like this, right? He's fighting at what weight? Featherweight. Who'll be around the featherweight in the UK? Because I don't think he's ever fought. He's fought Reece Bellotti, alright. You got guys like Lee Wood, Isaac Dogbay, Warrington, Dickens. Now, Jesse Dickens be an interesting fight. McDonald, Thomas Patrick Ward. He's only ever fought Reece Bellotti. Reece Bellotti is like, I was definitely hyped to him at one stage because he was knocking a lot of guys out, but after he lost that fight to Ryan Walsh, he really went downhill. So Jordan Gill is fighting him. I expect Jordan Gill to win that fight, maybe even stop him, because as I said, that's a career bantamweight fighting a featherweight. Didn't even go super bantamweight, and again he was knocked out in the round by Lee McGregor only in March of this year. So it's a quick one. It's a quick turnaround. Katie Taylor defends her undisputed title against Fariza Sharapova. Alright, 14. She's actually not bad looking, actually. Where's she from? Kazakhstan. 14-1. Alright. I don't really recognise any of these names. Who did she lose to? Who was the one loss and how was it? It was on a pro debut, Jesus. It was on a pro debut and she lost every single round. And that I'm assuming was a fellow Olympian or something like that. Oh yeah, that girl had loads of amateur fights. Wow. She lost to, okay, so she's only really lost to a decent, I can't pronounce that name, but in terms of her resume, it's not exactly, like, there are female fighters I know, and there's none of them here that I know, so it might be interesting. Katie Taylor, though, I'm going to say, she's 19-0, I think she's there for the taking at this stage. I really do. I think she's seen better days. I've not been impressed with her lately. I think she's slowing down a bit. And I think that someone like a Chantel Cameron, if Chantel Cameron in her fight, someone like an Alicia Baumgardner, especially Alicia Baumgardner, I think she'd take Katie Taylor's head off. I think Katie Taylor is there for the taking. So I expect this fight to be, put it like this, right? Look at Natasha Jonas versus Katie Taylor in the amateurs and look what happened in the pro games. Now, the amateurs was a long time ago. It's a different. It's 3 rounds. I get that, but Katie Taylor's definitely slowed down. It's noticeable. You can see it in her. She's definitely slowed down from my eyes. We get to the main event. Now, this is the one I'm really looking forward to. Conor Benn. What I say looking forward to? Conor Benn, Chris Algieri. Now, Eddie Hearn sold this before he announced Algieri as a 50-50 fight against a top 10, top 15 contender. We got Chris Algieri. The guy's been campaigning at 140 pounds for the last couple of years and has had 2 fights in the space of 5 years. 2 fights in the space of 5 years, maybe more. Maybe there was another fight in there. How many fights after the Spence fight did he have? Because I know he had the Tommy Coyle fight in 1 fight, so he's had 4 fights since the Spence fight. So he took nearly 3 years out of the ring, has had 3 UD wins and 1 stoppage win over Tommy Coyle, and he didn't look particularly good in that Tommy Coyle fight. It has to be said. That was on the undercard of AJ Ruiz, the first fight. And like that, they've all been at 140 pounds. So, Chris Algieri always had decent feet. He had a good punch output. But for my money, you could see the Tommy Coyle fight. I think his legs aren't really there anymore. I don't think he can move around this is only a 10-rounder. But saying that the Tommy Coyle fight, he was slowing down early on in that fight. He was there. He was getting hit by shots. Yeah, he was winning the fight, but he was resorting to pressure fire. Now, Chris Algieri can pressure. He can pressure. And he's done it effectively, to be fair, in certain fights. Like when he fought Amir Khan, I expected Chris Algieri to box with Amir Khan because that's primarily what he'd been doing. He'd been boxing. He'd been boxing his way through fights. The Provodnikov fight, he threw over 1,000 punches in that fight. He was throwing a lot. He was using a lot of volume without having much authority on the shots, without having much power. So that's mainly what Algieri was doing. He was moving around the ring. He was throwing a lot of shots. He wasn't standing and trading. For Amir Khan, he stood with Amir Khan. He traded with Amir Khan. He actually bullied Amir Khan at several stages in the fight. I was surprised that Chris Algieri had that physical strength because he never showed to me any great degree of physical strength. But he was actually pushing Amir Khan back in that fight. So he can do it. He did it to an extent against Spence, but that backfired spectacularly. I think he needs to do it now. I don't think he has the legs underneath him for 10 rounds to be able to move and to keep his volume up. He is fighting at 147, so that might help. He's not having to take the extra few pounds off. He's not the biggest 147 guy, and as I said, how old is Chris Algieri now? Actually, when I look at it, how old is he? Algieri is 37 years old. Wow, Jesus, it's been 7 years since he fought Provodnikov. Now that I think about it, and since he fought Pacquiao, time flies. But I don't think Algieri will have the legs underneath him. I think he might be tricky for Conor Benn in the first few rounds. My question for Conor Benn, has his ability to cut the ring off improved? Because whilst Chris Algieri, as I said, he doesn't have the legs to move around for 10 rounds, I don't think. Early on when he's fresh, he might get on his bike, move around, fiddle with Conor Benn, and just try and, just offset him. The Conor Benn in his last fight against Granados, he was kind of victim of, he kind of fell victim to what Graz was doing, where he just followed him around the ring. He couldn't cut the ring off effectively. He was wasting some shots. Graz was doing a good job riding the shots, getting out of the way. And I think that fight kind of, they decided, right, we'll pull back a bit on Conor Benn. You know, we'll pull him back a bit. We'll keep him maybe for another fight or two against this kind of faded contender. And I wonder, will we see an improvement to his footwork? You know, his ability to cut the ring off. I wonder if in this fight we'll see it. All right, because if we do, be interesting. It'd be nice to see. I'd like to see some improvements in him. I think that Algieri, he's been down several times in his career. That was a bad swelling that he got against Provodnikov. So I wonder if Conor Benn starts finding a home for his jab. His jab's not bad, Conor Benn, now, it has to be said. But if he starts finding a home for jabs, right hands, will some swelling come on Chris Algieri? Interestingly, again, this is a 10-rounder. Now, I find that quite interesting because Conor Benn has been in scheduled 12-rounders. He's only been in one, though. He's gone 10 rounds a couple of times. I wonder why it's 10 rounds as opposed to 12. Do they have faith that he'll get rid of Chris Algieri in the sufficient amount of time? Or is there something else? Do they maybe worry about Benn's stamina going 12 rounds, potentially? You know, if he's, overworking himself, if he's, missing with shots. Could that extra, couple of rounds at the end, could it come back to bite him? Who knows? I do find that interesting. The thing I find most interesting is that, again, it's not a puncher. That's a team throughout Conor Benn's career. We can't deny it. It's been a team. No punchers. Granos wasn't a puncher. Vargas wasn't known as a puncher. Algieri certainly is not a puncher. Who else has he fought? That guy Pena was not a puncher. Realistic. He's not a puncher. There's been no real punchers in Conor Benn's career. So I'd be... Look, I suppose you could say, gee, you don't need to put him in there with a puncher if you don't need to. And yeah, I can kind of say where you're coming from there, but at least guys with respectable power. Or even put him in there with someone who, yeah, you might say he can punch, but he mightn't have the knockout percentage to suggest it because he's got two left feet. He can't land it. Someone like that. So at least it keeps Ben on his toes thinking, okay, I need to be wary, be cognizant of what's come back at me, but I'm superior to this guy. We haven't even seen that. It's just been a case of feather-fisted, faded contenders. Now, I expect Conor Benn to win this fight. I'm going to pick Ben to win it on points over 10 rounds. I hope we'll see some entertainment in it, but I can see maybe Algieri maybe standing for a little bit and moving and trying to old-man him at other stages. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't know if this is going to be actually a good fight. I can see this fight being a bit dull. No, I have to say. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I'd love it if it, caught fire. Be interesting to see if it did, but I can't see that fight catching fire. Saying that, there's been a lot of upsets this year. A lot of them on Matchroom shows, ironically. But I don't think we'll see. I think if we see any upset, it might be Katie Taylor losing. I don't think Conor Benn's going to lose this fight. I think Conor Benn is going to... Well, we're going to see if he's improved at cutting the ring off a bit. I'd like to see him mix up the head and body. And be interesting to see how much bigger he is than Algieri. Because Algieri's not a big welterweight. He's not a big welterweight, but nor is Conor Benn. So it'll be interesting to see the difference in size and body mass. Because I'm convinced Conor Benn could do 140. And I genuinely, hand on heart, think he'd be a little bit more effective at that weight. I really do. I think he'd be more effective at 140. Saying that, got to give a pick. Conor Benn, UD, in a fairly run-of-the-mill 10-rounder. That's my pick for that. That's the card in a nutshell. Let me know what your thoughts on this card are. We do have some better cards coming up, it has to be said. Even this Friday, actually, I forgot we have the Spain show with Kerman Leharaga and Campbell Hatton on that card as well. Kerman Leharaga is fun to watch. Whether he wins or loses, the guy is entertaining. He's fun to watch. So you've that card coming up. And then Spanish cards are normally quite fun. We have Parker Chisora coming up. And although we're not getting Boazzi versus Vlasov, I'm a bit upset about that. I like that fight. It's still a decent card nevertheless. The main event, let's hope it catches fire this time. Haney versus Jojo this weekend. I think Haney's going to win that. I think Haney's going to probably outpoint Jojo. I think Jojo takes a good enough shot. Don't think he'll stop him. I think that's Haney, UD. What other shows do Matchroom have coming up? Just while I'm here, while I have BoxRec opened, I may as well have an old gander and see what old Eddie has. It's the Bilbao show. Yeah, we've already seen that. The Liverpool show. Is a show in Uzbekistan. Oh boy, They really trying to Majamov, I know. Israel Majamov, I do know. It's one of the few names on that show I can pronounce. But that's really it. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shows between now and Christmas. And you're probably waiting, probably the end of this month, maybe we'll get some fight cards announced in the new year. Or maybe early January we'll get some fight cards announced in the new year. But so far, that's that for the year. I'll probably do, maybe before Christmas or after Christmas, a review of the year in boxing. Talk about everything that's happened. Talk about some of the promoting, kind of some of the stuff that's gone on. I think it's only fitting. Review of the week has been so good on this channel and people have loved it that I think it's only fitting I do a review of the year. Why not? That's my thoughts on this card. Let me know yours in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on who will win. Conor, Benn, Chris, Algieri. Be interested to know your thoughts. Do you, like me, think it's got UD written all over it, or do you think we'll see a stoppage? Let me know in the comment section. If you could, lads and lasses, I'd really appreciate it if you could smash the like button. It helps your boy out. Something terrible. And subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. For now, lads and lassies, peace.